What is up everyone, it's Saber here and welcome to another Naruto What If. If you end up liking the video, please consider subscribing. It's free and you can take it back at any time and it really helps me out, and this is my third channel, so if you want some more what ifs, go check out my other channels. And with all of the YouTube formalities out of the way, let's get into it. I am sorry, I am truly sorry, I am so sorry. Bowing from the waist at an almost 90 degrees angle, All Might's face lacked its usual radiant smile. All Might did not raise from his bowing posture for one entire minute at the press conference that took place a day after the USJ incident. In truth, people could not hold him responsible for the disaster that happened at USJ. All Might had been dozens of miles away. At that time it was the villain's fault, they were the criminals. However, the fact that UA had been targeted by the League of Villains because of him could not be ignored either. Nevertheless, Mineta Minoru's parents aside, nobody else was pained by the boy's death as much as All Might. He could not stop beating himself over his negligence. If I had been more careful and monitored my muscle form's remaining time with more attention, it wouldn't have gotten to this. If I hadn't stopped to admonish that quirkless boy, maybe I could have gotten to USJ in time to stop the villains, he thought bitterly as he watched the first-year students of UA entering the stadium where the sports festival was going to take place. All Might's eyes were involuntarily drawn to a first-year student with wavy green hair and a rather innocent face that greatly contrasted with his well-built body. Midoriya Izuku was partly responsible for All Might running out of time and becoming unable to get to USJ when the League of Villains attacked. Back then, All Might had witnessed the scene where the boy smashed his metallic staff into the gigantic villain's nuts, incapacitating him. Although nearly 1 year had passed since their first encounter, All Might had not forgotten Izuku's face. After all, it was partly because of Izuku that the Sludge Villain had escaped that time too, so he knew that he was quirkless. Once the police took the unconscious villain into their custody, All Might scolded Midoriya Izuku for nearly 15 minutes straight for his recklessness for getting involved in such a dangerous situation. Despite being quirkless in the meantime, his muscle form ran out of time and the rest was history. This boy, mixed feelings surged in his heart at that moment. On one hand, he could not bring himself to dislike how earnest and dedicated Midoriya Izuku seemed to be about becoming a pro hero. All Might was not blind to the transformation his body had gone through over the past year. He understood that the boy must have shed plenty of blood and tears to get that physique in such a short time. His self-sacrificing disposition and disregard for danger were worthy of admiration too, and those were some of the most important characteristics of a hero. But on the other hand, somehow Midoriya Izuku had distracted him from doing his duties properly twice already, and every time All Might got distracted, someone ended up dying. First it had been the Sludge Villain, now it was Mineta Minoru. Thinking about the Sludge Villain, All Might's mind involuntarily went to the other boy that had been at the center of both incidents too, Uzumaki Naruto. I still don't see how a young Uzumaki could have killed the Sludge Villain, but that is of no consequence anymore in the light of the recent events. After seeing Naruto's relentless and unbending will despite being faced with a hopeless situation, All Might was compelled to reassess his opinion of him. Uzumaki Naruto had put his life on the line and fought until the bitter end for the sake of protecting his classmates. He was not a villain in the making, he was a hero through and through. Speaking of the Fox Boy, All Might could not find him among the several hundred first-year students that had lined up orderly in front of the stage. Given Naruto's unusual appearance after his Fox Quirk's second awakening, he had 3 large fox tails at his back. He should have been very easy to spot. Is he perhaps not participating? Is he not interested in the sports festival? His musings stopped when the school principal Nizu began to speak. It was a short speech that condemned the deeds of the League of Villains and expressed support for Minoru Mineta's family. Nizu ended his speech by saying, "Let us all take a minute of silence for Minoru Mineta's unfortunate passing," while a picture of a smiling Mineta appeared on all the screens on the sports festival stadium, being watched by several thousands of people, of which many were pro-heroes. Should have been a harrowing experience for someone as timid and insecure as Izuku. That is, if Izuku had been the same as a year ago. Nowadays, his disposition was a far cry from the past. Working out and gaining muscles had done wonders for his confidence, and his grueling combat training with Naruto had changed him too. Last but not least, his encounter with the giant pink-skinned villain had lit a fire into his soul. Kamui Woods, a top 10 hero in Mount Lady, a famous rookie hero with a very strong quirk, had been helpless to deal with the situation. They had had no way of defeating the villain while he was holding those 3 civilians hostage. However, Izuku's intervention had turned the tides completely. His Florida Smash attack had sent that villain to the Shadow Realm while also eliminating his ability to reproduce, and if that villain still managed to get a kid in the future, the ghost of the trauma he had suffered from that Florida Smash was something that even the 3rd generation after him would be able to feel. I can do it, I can be a hero too. Izuku had not let his recent success go to his head. He knew that in a fair fight, The pink-skinned giant could kill even 10 of him without breaking a sweat, but the fact that his intervention had saved the lives of 3 people was undisputed proof in his mind that he could become a pro-hero too. In spite of being quirkless, All Might rebuked me for saving those people. He said I could have been killed, or that I could have gotten the hostages killed if I had failed. He told me that without a quirk it's only a matter of time before I get killed by a villain. Remembering the scene of All Might scolding him for being reckless made him scrunch his eyes close. It hurt that his idol did not believe in him. It hurt that his role model had rebuked him so harshly. It hurt badly. I will show him at this sports festival. I will show him and everyone else just how far can a quirkless person go. The euphoria and the happiness that had flooded his being after saving those 3 people had made him surer than ever in regards to his dream. Even if his idol All Might told him that he had no chance, he was not going to give up. Becoming a hero was no longer something that he desired only because he admired All Might. Izuku did not want to become a pro-hero only because he thought it was cool. Not anymore. Saving the lives of that family of 3 had made him understand just how much even his meager strength could mean for a person in need. His hands clenching into fists and his eyes burning with determination, Izuku unknowingly entered a very special state. Dang, where late Minato set in chagrin when he saw on the large screens of the stadium that the first event of the sports festival had already started. Then shouting at the same time, Minato and Kushina pointed their fingers at each other. It's your fault. How my fault? You're the one who jumped on us. And Kushina began. That's because you were hogging Naruto all to yourself. I'm usually at work and don't have as many chances as you to spend time with him. You should be more considerate. Minato cut her off. HMPF, first come first served. Besides, we both know that I'm Naruto's favorite parent. He's a mama's boy through and through. HAH, Minato exclaimed, scandalized. You take that back. His golden fox ears flat against his head. Naruto covered his face with both hands in embarrassment. His parents were arguing like an old married couple with no regard for their surroundings. The reason for their argument was just as embarrassing too. Mom, Dad were in public. The 2 adults had the decency to stop their bickering and at least look sheepish. Fortunately, the crowd's cheering was so loud that no one else heard them. Unfortunately, less than half a minute after they stepped into the stadium, the 3 of them were looking for some empty seats. Naruto's face suddenly appeared on one of the immense screens in the center of the stadium. A moment later, his startled face appeared on every single one of the remaining screens. Oh my, what is this? Ladies and gentlemen, there he is, Uzumaki Naruto in the flesh. A very loud voice reverberated present. Mick's voice was unmistakable. The hero's excited voice was so loud that Naruto felt some discomfort even despite the ear mufflers that he had stuffed inside his fox ears to protect himself from extreme sounds. That, however, was nothing compared to what followed next. Naruto, Naruto, Naruto. It was when several thousand people started chanting Naruto's name that it finally dawned on Minato and Kushina just how popular their son had actually become. Naruto himself too was overwhelmed by their reception. People were cheering and screaming his name almost as if he was All Might. Someone unexpectedly patted Naruto's shoulder from behind and said close to his ears for him to hear them, "Don't just stand there frozen. Wave your hand at the cameras, or at least smile. The whole country is watching you right now." Turning around, Naruto was surprised to see who it was. Long white hair and rabbit ears, dark skin, very long and athletic legs, wide hips, a tiny waist, and impressive bust, and a large grin that was so infectious that Naruto involuntarily found himself smiling back at her in spite of his befuddled state. It was none other than Rumi Usajiyama, or how most people knew her as the rabbit hero Maruko. When Rumi waved at the camera and Naruto followed suit, the crowd's roars exploded in volume. Even the students that were in the middle of crossing the canyon with ropes could not help being distracted, and stopped momentarily, overwhelmed by the crowd's reaction. With Maruko making herself visible, Naruto's name was forgotten as the crowd started chanting the rabbit hero's name. Instead, the commotion lasted no less than half a minute, but once things went back to normal, the cameras returned to the students participating in the first event of the sports festival, the obstacle course race, with the rabbit hero leading them to the VIP booths reserved for UA High School staff and important guests. Naruto and his parents finally found some empty seats, but only a few seconds after they sat down, Kushina suddenly shoved a notebook and a pen into Maruko's face and bowed her head low while almost shouting, "Maruko-san, please give me your autograph. I'm a huge fan." The rabbit hero snickered, seemingly in very high spirits, as she signed Kushina's notebook. In the meantime, Naruto flushed in embarrassment at his mother's fangirlish behavior, especially when he saw her taking a diadem with a pair of white rabbit ears seemingly out of thin air and putting it on her head. Naruto's embarrassment only increased when his father, albeit with a reluctant face, also put a pair of rabbit ears on his head. "Kaya, I was hoping to meet you today, but I've never thought I'd actually get to speak to you face to face. Maruko-san, you're the best, my favorite hero." "Girl power," she shouted and pumped her fist into the air. "You're almost 40 years old, Mom, for the love of God," Naruto thought, as he buried his face in his palms for the second time that day. Minato was not that different. Either imagine an intellectual-looking middle-aged man being forced to wear a pair of girlish rabbit ears. Minato wanted to just dig a hole somewhere and die, but he had no choice. If I ruin this moment for her, I'll be sleeping on the couch for a month. No, not even the couch, I'll end up sleeping on the front door carpet. Minato thought he could only grit his teeth and endure it. He would make sure to get back at his wife soon though. Ahaha. Maruko laughed out loud again and said to Naruto, "Your parents are amazing." In spite of her laughter in Naruto's eyes, her face seemed to say please help, but Naruto had no way of helping her. As a fellow martial arts practitioner and enthusiast, Uzumaki Kushina had always been a big fan of the rabbit hero because not only that she was a woman that kicked major, but even her name Maruko was a homage to one of the best and most exciting kickboxers during the golden era of kickboxing, and one of the legendary pioneers of mixed martial arts too. From a few centuries ago, Maruko Crow Cop, and to top it all off, Maruko had also ended up saving her precious son's life less than 2 weeks ago. To make a long story short, in the present, Kushina's fangirlism towards Maruko bordered veneration. The rabbit hero was fearless and relentless, a force to be reckoned with in a fight, but even the fearless Maruko could only take a step back and engage in a strategic retreat, running the hell away, in the presence of the rabid monster that was Naruto's mother, thanking the gods above and underground that her smartphone suddenly rang. Rumi took the chance to excuse herself without appearing to be rude and left the spectators stand. As she quickly slipped away, she also grabbed Naruto by his arm on her way out. Considering that Maruko could deadlift a ton without much difficulty, Naruto was as light as a feather to her. As for Minato and Kushina, they did not notice his absence right away as they were too absorbed in watching the last segment of the first event, the minefield. Now the two of them were alone in a corridor, the cheers of the crowd watching the sports festival. Only a distant hum. Maruko's usually playful grin gradually disappeared as she fiddled with her phone, looking over her shoulder. Naruto's eyebrows rose when he saw what she was reading. The layout of the app she was using was unfamiliar to him, but it seemed to be a forum app of sorts. The title of the thread was Hero Killer Stain, spotted by a restaurant's back alley camera in Tokyo. He feared that the phone would become a crumpled ball of metal when he saw the way her forearms bulged as she clenched her fingers around it, letting out a sigh. Rumi's rabbit ears sagged a bit as she said in an almost whiny voice, "What should I do? I want to go after him." Then, answering his unasked question, she said, "I'm supposed to stay here and crown the winners of the sports festival, but that's so boring. Normally it was one of the teachers or alumni of the school that did the crowning. Specifically, All Might was the one who usually crowned the winners of the sports festival that year. However, All Might had turned down said task. Although Maruko had not studied at UA High, the principal of the school contacted her and asked her to take All Might's place that year. The reason for that was not difficult to understand. It was a tactic he employed in order to diminish the backlash of the public at the fact that the sports festival was still being held in spite of the USJ disaster. After all, currently the rabbit hero's popularity was off the charts. The public absolutely adored her. Rumi's conundrum, if it could even be called that, did not last for long. Barely a few seconds later, she showed a toothy grin and threw her hands in the air. Who cares about some sports festival? I won't miss out on this opportunity to catch that asshole. Looking at Naruto with her red eyes sparkling in excitement, she said, "Why do you say, do you want to tag along me?" Naruto asked, surprised at her unexpected offer. I don't think." Maruko just laughed and grabbed him by the arm again. It looked like her question had been mostly rhetorical. She did not seem to care what his answer was going to be. "We're gonna have so much fun, and you'll get to see a pro hero in action with your own eyes too. Win-win if you ask me." "Wait, I can't go. I've gotta let my parents know if I'm going somewhere. And I'm also not sure yet if I want a Jaya," he began to say, only to let out a startled cry when Maruko suddenly hoisted him in the air and put him on her shoulder as if he was a sack of potatoes. "Wait a minute," Naruto cried out. It was the first time that he and Rabbit Hero had met after the USJ incident, and she was already taking him on some hero adventure to catch a metahuman serial killer. He had not even made a final decision on whether he wanted to still become a hero or not yet. Things were moving so fast, he having trouble keeping up, but his mind became blank when only 2 seconds later he found himself outside of the stadium, still on Maruko's shoulder. Before he had the chance to protest again, something akin to a sonic boom exploded as the air was suddenly displaced and Naruto almost fainted from the abrupt acceleration. Despite carrying a boy weighing over 70 kilograms on her shoulder, the rabbit hero started running so fast that she broke the sound barrier. A powerful gust of wind blew away all the dust and dirt from the rooftop of an apartment building as 2 people landed on it with a thud. A few seconds later, sounds of someone throwing up were heard. "Pussy," Mirko said, and snickered at the sight of the foxboy, looking as though he was half dead. "You freaking psychopath. I thought I was going to die," Naruto shouted at her when he finally got a hold of his upset stomach. "Oh, stop it with the drama queen act." Naruto felt his blood pressure shoot through the roof when he saw her laughing. "Drama queen? If I was a normal kid, that sprint of yours would've Killed me. It wasn't that fast, honest, you broke the sound barrier, ahaha. I might have been a little too hyped because of, she began awkwardly, but her expression suddenly did a 180 turn as she said in excitement, oh right, the hero killer. Taking out her smartphone, Mirko appeared to forgot all about the incensed boy as she used the Hero Network app to check again the article about the hero killer. Unbelievable, he said, exasperated. After dragging him against his will all the way to Tokyo, it was over. 100 kilometers away from Uehai, she was now acting as if he was there. He sat down and lied on his back on the building's rooftop, too drained to even feel angry anymore. A minute later he stood up and dusted off his clothes. I'd him a head out now that got the rabbit hero's attention, however, getting the feeling that he wouldn't be able to scurry away if he lingered. Naruto swiftly jumped off the rooftop with no hesitation. Mirko rushed towards the edge of the rooftop, instinctively trying to prevent him from jumping off, but when she saw how the fox boy was defying the laws of physics as he ran down and jumped from wall to wall, she relaxed, remembering just how good he was at using his quirk. Hey, where are you going? She yelled and jumped right after him. Instead of replying, Naruto let out an oh crap under his breath and broke into a sprint, his fluffy tail standing comically stiff in contrast with the rest of his body. Oi, why are you running away from me? Mirko shouted as she broke into a dash. To why are you chasing me? Naruto hollered back at her and suddenly made a turn, heading into a crowded and rather narrow side alley filled with all sorts of street vendors and hundreds of pedestrians. When Mirko entered the side alley and saw how many people were walking around, she let out a grin. Cunning brat, she said in amusement, knowing that in a race of pure speed Mirko was faster than him. Naruto had chosen a crowded place because thanks to his fox quirks, innate agility and reaction time, he would be able to run faster than her. Here her thigh muscles tensed as she launched herself into the air, landing on a rooftop. Then she started running on top of the buildings, chasing him from above. Unfortunately for Naruto, with his unique appearance, he couldn't blend in with the crowd easily. His 3 golden fox tails stood out so much that Mirko had no difficulty in keeping her eyes trained on him, seeing that she was still hot on his trail in spite of his best attempts to shake her off. Naruto increased his speed even more and rushed into another side alley, briefly looking over his shoulder to see if the rabbit hero was still following him. He slammed so hard into a wall, so hard that he bounced back like a tennis ball and fell down on his ass, dazed, while Naruto was running from the rabbit hero as if his tails were on fire. Izuku was riding one of the biggest highs of his life. His curly hair was singed, his elbows and knees were bruised, and his clothes were tattered from all the mines that he had blown up, but the smile on his face could not be any more radiant. Against all odds, in spite of not having a quirk, he had won the first event of the sports festival. That turn of events blindsided all the spectators and the other participating students as well. The A-class students that had been baptized through fire by surviving the League of Villains attack on the USJ had been the favorites by a long shot, especially Endeavor's son and the boy who appeared to be his closest rival, Katsuki Bakugo. Nobody had expected a general studies student to defeat the prodigies from the hero course. Everyone is watching me now, look at me, watch me, I'll show you how far I can go. Even without a quirk, brimming with anticipation, he could not wait for midnight to announce the second event of the sports festival. Back to Naruto and Mirko. Did ya really think you could outrun the rabbit hero? Haha, I got you now. Shaking off the cobwebs in his head, Naruto realized that the wall that he had slammed face first into was actually the very person he had been running away from. But I'll give credit where it's due, you weren't half bad for a dumb little brat. Naruto's face scrunched up in annoyance. Her smug grin was annoying him even more than her words. All right, you won. He threw his hands up and said, look, I just want to go home. You're telling me you're not in the least curious about seeing firsthand a pro hero in action? Mirko said, and put her hands on her waist. Not buying it. I'm not really. I don't want to become. Naruto began to say, but Mirko suddenly raised her hand to stop him and said, wait a moment. She closed her eyes for a moment and inhaled deeply. I smell blood. There are like 5 restaurants or more in this block alone. It's probably from the chickens they're cooking. Naruto said he could not sense anything, but he figured that her sense of smell was most likely more developed than his. No, this is human blood, Mirko said with a serious face this time. If you want to follow me, you can, but don't interfere. Just watch from a distance and wait until things are under control, she told him, and started running in the direction she could sense the smell coming from. But Naruto had no intention of actually following her. Now that she left, it was his chance to slip away. He started running in the opposite direction. God damn it, Mirko cussed when she came to a stop and looked at the sight in front of her. Blood was pooling on the sidewalk, and a carved up and mutilated body lied in the middle of it. It was a man, and judging by his attire he was a pro hero. Rushing at the bleeding person, she quickly checked his vitals before exhaling in relief. He's still breathing. A small battle took place in her mind. The precepts of a professional hero dictated that rescuing people took priority over capturing villains. On the other hand, catching the hero killer had been a goal of hers for weeks now. But I'm not a medic, there's nothing I can do to save him, she debated with herself as she dialed 119 The hotline of the ambulance in Japan. Nevertheless, in the end she could not bring herself to leave the dying hero alone. She could only clench her fist in frustration at the thought of the hero killer getting away once again as she waited for the ambulance and for the police to arrive at the scene. Hello, hey dad, it's me Naruto. Where are you? The first event of the sports festival is over already. Naruto chuckled awkwardly. Haha, you won't believe it, but I'm in Tokyo. Funny, come here. The second event is about to start. You don't want to miss it. They're going to have a boat Tauscher game. All first years will be split into 2 teams and they'll have to topple each other's poles. I'm so excited. No dad, I'm serious. I really am in Tokyo. The rabbit hero dragged me here with her. I swear to God she is crazy. A few moments of silence followed before Naruto heard a bunch of almost imperceptible words. Minato had covered the phone speakers with his hand for Naruto to not hear what he was about to say. Honey, I think Naruto just went with Mirko on a date. What date? Naruto sputtered. Didn't you hear what I said? She took me with her by force. From the shuffling and grunts he was hearing, Naruto guessed that Minato and Kushina were now wrestling for the possession of the phone. Living up to her credentials as a judo black belt, Kushina managed to defeat her husband in this little game and snatch his phone away. Naruto, what date is he talking about? Kushina's raised voice came from the other end of the line and he had to distance the phone from his head lest he went deaf. I don't know what he's talking about, Mom, I promise, Naruto said immediately. His quick denial however seemed to only further raise her suspicions. Don't do anything reckless, okay? You're still too young to be doing the deed and I expect you to be home before 8 o'clock so we can have dinner. Better yet, bring her with you when Mom, Naruto said, now becoming exasperated, his face flushing too. This isn't a date, for God's sake. She took me here to show me how she's going to beat up a villain. Ah, how romantic is that? Came Minato's snicker from the background and Kushina burst into giggles too. We're just messing with you, Kushina said eventually, her voice filled with barely repressed laughter. I say you take this chance to get closer to her. Mirko is a bit controversial, but she's one of the top 5 heroes in Japan for a reason. She is very powerful and popular as well. Don't waste this chance. If you make a good impression, you could become her sidekick as soon as you graduate. Getting a first-hand look at her hero activities is a precious opportunity too. When a few seconds passed without Naruto replying, Kushina said, Naruto-chan, is everything alright over there? How should I say this? I kinda ditched her. As his mother's annoyed sigh and the sound of someone slapping their forehead came from the other end of the line. Naruto chuckled helplessly before mumbling, sorry, it's okay. Kushina said, you told me this morning how you feel about becoming a hero, so I won't say anything else to pressure you. Just She made a small pause to choose her words carefully. Don't take too long before making a final decision. There are times in life when opportunities come your way, and if you don't grab them with both hands you might never get the chance again. Naruto talked with his parents for a few more minutes before they had to end the call. With the second event of the UA High Sports Festival kicking off, the noise made by the spectators in the stands became too loud for them to talk to each other on the phone. Putting his hands in the pockets of his pants, Naruto started walking at a leisurely pace as he gawked at the crowded streets of Japan's capital. It was not the first time he had visited Tokyo. He had been on 2 trips with his class in middle school, but he had never gotten the chance to wander around by himself in non-touristic places. As he passed by a shotengai, his mouth started to water at the delicious smells coming from it. It had to be said, Tokyo was ranked as one of the cities with the most restaurants per capita in the world, and Japanese cuisine was recognized worldwide as one of the best too. With his sharper than average sense of smell, Naruto never stood a chance, but when he went in line to one of the food stalls he was startled to realize that a bunch of girls wearing high school uniforms ahead of him suddenly made way for him and took out their smartphones to film them. 3 golden fox tails. It's him, isn't it? Whoa, it really is him. What is he doing in Tokyo? Oh, he's so much cuter in person. The commotion that the high school girls caused attracted other people's attention, and Naruto suddenly found himself in the middle of a mob of several dozen people, all snapping pictures at him and trying to talk to him. Excuse my rudeness, are you by chance Uzumaki? Naruto, I saw you on TV the other day. It's an honor to meet you. I'm rooting for you. You're going to be an excellent hero in the future. With so many people all of a sudden clamoring around him and all of them talking at the same time, Naruto was stumped, not knowing how to react. 1 hour later, Naruto found himself on a remote bench in a public park, his arms full of snacks and souvenirs. Once they discovered him, the crowd and the food stall owners in the vicinity showered him with gifts. It was only after shaking hands with and signing autographs for nearly 100 people that Naruto finally managed to get away out of theirs. So much food, what am I going to do with all of it? Food from street stalls was not the kind that could be preserved for long. Most of it would end up becoming spoiled by the time evening came. Regardless, he couldn't throw it away. His conscience wouldn't let him tarnish people's goodwill and feelings for him like that. Picking up a paper bag with ikayaki, he bit into it with gusto and closed his eyes as he savored the rich flavor of the grilled squid meat. Time passed and eventually Naruto let out a long breath as he rested his back against the bench. I can't eat anymore. He was so full his stomach bulged out as if he was pregnant, but the pile of food on the bench was only halfway done. Even someone with an appetite as healthy as his couldn't finish it all. Muttering a small prayer of thanks to the people who had gifted him the food, Naruto gathered all that was left and stood up. Though he could not finish everything by himself, it didn't mean he was going to throw all the food away as any other big metropolis in the world. Tokyo had its share of unfortunate people without a home that would appreciate a small gesture of kindness. As Naruto gave his last snack to a homeless old man, he noticed a little girl watching them wistfully with her big red eyes following his line of sight. The old man saw the little girl watching them too. She seems to be hungry too. Here, young little miss, you can have it, the old man said with a gentle smile, and stretched out his hands to give her the snack that Naruto had just given him. The old man's unexpected kindness moved Naruto deeply. It's easy to give things away and make good deeds when you have more than you need, but this Aji-san has nothing. Naruto put his hand gently on his forearm to stop him and said, "Don't worry uncle, keep your food, I'll go get something for the little girl." "Are you sure that's alright? You don't have to know, it's not a problem, I insist." He went to the little girl and crouching to be on the same eye level with her, he asked, "Hi, would you like me to buy you some dango?" The little girl looked down in embarrassment as she mumbled, "Yes." Naruto gave her a sunny smile and patted her head softly before standing up and rushing to a nearby convenience store. A few minutes later he returned with a bag carrying a pack of dango and 2 cartons of apple juice, one for the little girl and one for the old man. After giving the old man a carton of juice and receiving his heartfelt thanks, Naruto went to the little girl and handed her the juice and the food too. "Thank you," the girl said shyly, not minding his image. Naruto sat down on the sidewalk next to the little girl and watched her. It was highly unusual for children to live on the streets in Japan. It was the first time he was seeing a homeless child. The Children Protection Agency normally took all orphan children or those without a stable home and put them into foster families, thinking that a girl as young as her was living on the streets. Naruto could not simply leave her and be on his way. "My name is Naruto, by the way. What's your name?" The girl took a few moments to swallow a big mouthful of food before replying, "Eri, my name is Eri." "I see. Eri-chan, are you alone? Where are your parents?" The little girl put down the stick of dango momentarily and looked at the ground as she said, "They're dead." He felt a node forming in his neck. "I'm sorry to hear that." He truly was. Looking at the deplorable appearance of the little girl and knowing that she was an orphan, Naruto felt his heartbreaking. If anything, there were not many people that understood as well as he did what it was like to be an orphan in his past life. He had been an orphan too, even so he had never been in the little girl's situation. Although the third Hokage had not been the most attentive caretaker, at least Naruto had always had a place to sleep and food to eat. In contrast, the little girl was homeless. Her clothes were rags, she had no shoes on her feet, and her arms and legs were wrapped in bandages. He took a few moments to calm his emotions before he spoke. "Is there nobody else related to you? No one else that can take care of you?" Finished wolfing down her food, Eri started wringing her hands nervously at his words. "I have relatives, but they are bad people that hurt me," the little girl said and whispered inaudibly the last part before looking around terrified. Naruto's sensitive hearing, however, picked up what she said. Furthermore, he could smell it. He could smell the feelings of fear coming off her now. It's not just fear, she's terrified, so she's a runaway. Anger started bubbling in his veins as he looked at the dirty bandages covering her arms and legs. What kind of bastards would hurt a little girl like that? When Mirko had kidnapped him from UA High and dragged him to Tokyo, Naruto had never thought he would stumble upon such a situation, but now that he did, he could not ignore the little girl and pretend he had not heard anything. Standing up, he stretched his hand out for her to grab it as he said, "Will you come with me? Come." With Overhaul, and his chains were activated in an instinctual act to ensure his survival as his golden chains flailed slowly around him. The light coming off from Eri's horn avoided him like the plague. "Why did you do that, monster? I wish you were never born." A woman's screams resounded in Eri's mind and tears started rolling down her cheeks like a river. That's because those were her mother's words. It was her own mother cursing at her after her quirk went out of control and erased her father from existence. Naruto watched with wide eyes and bated breath as the bloodied and lifeless body of the young man collapsed on the street, suddenly regenerated back like a miracle, and opened his eyes as Overhaul came back to life with a gasp. He was extremely quick to take note of the situation and launched himself at the little girl. However, Overhaul only managed to take 2 steps before he stumbled and crashed down as his legs unexpectedly shrank in length. No, his entire body shrank, his appearance inexplicably becoming more than 10 years younger for the first time in her entire life. Eri heard her tormentor's voice crack. "Eri, stop, please stop!" Overhaul cried out in panic as he made a last-ditch attempt to jump towards her, but in the next second the now teenage Overhaul collapsed once again. He had been turned into a toddler. Then, to Naruto's shock, as the yellow light coming off from Eri's horn engulfed the toddler, it suddenly disappeared into thin air as a nigh godlike shinobi from a fantasy-like world, and as a current resident in a society of superpowered heroes and villains, Naruto had seen many things in his 2 lives. He had seen demonic beasts as tall as mountains, he had seen people that could transform themselves into liquids or fire, he had seen beings capable of dishing out attacks no weaker than a nuclear bomb, he had seen the dead being brought back to life, he had seen people capable of crossing dimensions and teleporting, and he had even fought against a goddess, but he had never seen anything like what had just happened in front of his eyes. He had never even heard of a power capable of anything like that. Even the most broken ability of the Uchiha clan Izanagi paled in comparison to the little girl's quirk to completely ignore the laws of physics and reverse time was a power beyond the realm of mortals. It was akin to the power of a god. A few moments later, the horn on Eri's forehead stopped emitting light and shrunk to a size 3 times smaller than before. Thoroughly exhausted, Eri lost consciousness and fell down bonelessly even as he rushed to catch the little girl before she fell onto the hard asphalt. Naruto did not retrieve his adamantine sealing chains into his body, still too freaked out by what he had just seen. If it hadn't been for my chains, would she have turned me into a toddler too, or worse, would I have completely stopped existing? But as that thought came to his mind, his chains sank back into his spine and he embraced the girl's thin and scrawny body tightly. Having run away from the bloody scene, Naruto was once again sitting on a bench in a public park. He had chosen against going to a remote place this time to avoid being attacked by the gangsters coming from Eri's family again, seeing as it was well into the afternoon and May the weather was sunny, warm and less humid than any other time of the year. It was the perfect time for people to come out for a walk and enjoy the advent of summer. Children of all ages were walking hand in hand with their parents. Vivacious high school students dressed in their respective uniforms could be seen everywhere, and there were even couples and old people walking around. Every once in a while some passers-by would throw curious glances at the blonde-haired boy with fox ears and the little girl sleeping in his arms, but they didn't poke their noses where they weren't supposed to. Eri-chan, muttered Naruto, as he gently caressed the back of her head, trying to soothe her. Even in her dreams the little girl did not seem to have peace. Her tiny hands were clutching tightly at his t-shirt, and the wetness at the corners of her eyes betrayed that she was crying. She was having a nightmare. He could only imagine what she was going through at that moment. A child as young and fragile as her had inadvertently killed a person due to her quirk going berserk. Her extremely powerful quirk was no different than a curse for her, a curse that had caused her an untold amount of pain and suffering. Don't you worry, Eri-chan, from now on I'll protect you. I swear I won't let anyone hurt you anymore, he whispered as he caressed her white bluish hair. He spent the next few minutes in silence as he contemplated his next course of action. I'm a minor, so the law will never let me become her guardian in normal conditions. I have to convince mom and dad to take her. And a troubled look appeared on his face. Adopting a child was not something that people did in the spur of the moment. Normally people would think about such matters for several long months and have multiple meetings with the child before finally deciding on whether they would adopt them or not. He wasn't very hopeful about his parents all of a sudden accepting to take Eri, and also someone has probably discovered the massive amount of blood and gore in that children's playground by now, and those thugs would surely kick up a fuss when their pal doesn't turn up the next day. At their meeting house I will become their prime suspect in that plague masked dude's disappearance. The more he thought about the situation, the bigger his headache was becoming. But as he looked at how Eri was clutching at his shirt as she slept, thoughts of giving up never even sprouted in his mind. He knew what it felt like to be a cursed child and carry a great burden. The desire to protect the little girl was burning with such intensity in his heart that Naruto was surprised at himself. In the end he steeled his resolve and made a decision, dialing his father's number. Again he brought his phone to his ear. Hey Dad, do you see All Might anywhere in the stands close by? Naruto said right away. What happened? Did you get in trouble? Is everything okay? Are you alright? Minato shot a series of questions one after another. I did get in trouble, but everything is okay at the moment, Naruto said quickly. I really need to speak with All Might, please Dad. Minato appeared to be hesitating. I don't know, Naruto. How can I just waltz in front of him and demand he spoke to my son on the phone? He is All Might, you know. With All Might becoming his teacher at UA High, Naruto had gotten used to treating All Might almost like a normal person, like his teacher. He had forgotten just how much was All Might worshipped by the average people at large. It's fine, you'll see, he's our teacher at UA. He told me directly before that if I ever need help or someone to talk to, he'll always be available for me, Naruto said. And it was not a lie. In the first place, All Might had enrolled Naruto at UA High through his recommendation because he wanted to guide Naruto into becoming a hero to prevent the possibility of him going on the wrong path. Alright, Minato grumbled as he stood up and walked towards All Might's seat. Since the rabbit hero had brought the Uzumaki family to the VIP booth, they were together with other members of UA High's staff, therefore All Might was there too. With All Might being a hulking man over 2 meters tall and packed with bulging muscles, it was hardly a challenge to spot him in the crowd. Naruto unexpectedly heard a robotic voice telling him that his call had been put on hold, but 20 seconds later All Might's boisterous voice made him go temporarily deaf in one ear. Uzumaki-shonen, I heard you wanted to talk to me. Just from hearing All Might's voice, Naruto felt as if a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. All Might's charisma and the good name he had built were so strong that just saying a few words was enough to fill people with hope and bring them a feeling of safety. I found a homeless girl. She ran away from her relatives because they were hurting her. I think they are part of a gang of some sort because they attacked us with knives. They want to capture her back. As he began to speak quickly, trying to cram in as much information as he could in as few words as possible. Hold on a minute, All Might exclaimed, momentarily overwhelmed by Naruto's unexpected bombardment of words. First of all, where are you? I'm in Tokyo. I'll send you the location through my dad's cross chat right away. All Might was startled yet again. Had he not seen the fox boy enter the stadium together with his parents a while ago? His face had been on all the screens of the stadium. How was he in Tokyo now? But he did not waste time asking unimportant questions. Why haven't you gone to the police first? They can help you much faster than me since they are much closer. The girl sounded desperate about not going to the police. Her relatives must be having someone on the inside because she was terrified of being sent back. All Might was silent for a few moments before saying, go into a public location that's likely to be patrolled by heroes, preferably around a traffic camera to discourage any attackers from ambushing you. I will come to get you in a few minutes. Don't hang up, keep the line open so I can hear you if anything unexpected happens. Half an hour later, Naruto and All Might were sitting in a private room at a police station in Tokyo, talking. What a terrifying ability, All Might muttered in disbelief when he heard from Naruto what Aries' quirk was capable of. But in spite of that, the number one hero was not looking at the little girl as if she was a time-ticking bomb. Instead, his eyes were filled with compassion. She was not the only case that he had heard of where children lost control of their quirks and caused a disaster. In fact, although they weren't all that common, such unfortunate situations started occurring increasingly often in the past 2 decades. Society at large had not become aware of it yet, but medics and scientists all over the world had taken notice of it. What have they done to the poor girl to bring her in such a state? All Might thought as he saw how Eri, who was now awake, was clutching at Naruto's clothes seemingly as if he was her lifeline. Furthermore, the girl appeared to be malnourished and her arms and legs were covered with bandages. Eri-chan, it's alright, Naruto said in a soft voice and patted her on the head. All Might is here to help. You won't send me back, will you? The little girl asked fearfully. Please don't. I don't know what they'll do now that he's gone. Tears started stinging at Naruto's eyes when he heard her plead that, but he held them and letting out a shuddering breath to calm down his turbulent emotions, he said, nobody is going to take you away, I promise. I'm not sure it's wise to make her promises that you might not be able to keep, All Might said hesitantly. There isn't anyone else who can take care of Eri properly, nobody except for me and Aizawa-sensei. Naruto said those words threw All Might off the loop. He sensed that whatever the fox boy was about to tell him next was going to be big. What do you mean, young boy? A complicated expression appeared on Naruto's face, but he had already made up his mind, so he didn't drag it on. Sensei, I need you to promise that whatever I'm going to tell you will stay between the two of us. If anyone else finds out the secret, I'm going to tell you now. My entire family will probably be murdered. This isn't a prank, I'm dead serious. Do I have your word? All Might's face mirrored Naruto's complicated expression. You're putting me in a very tough spot, but I promise you that as long as it's not something worthy of being prosecuted for, your secret is safe with me. That wasn't exactly the kind of answer Naruto had been hoping for, but that would have to suffice, because there was nobody else he could turn to. He had to make a leap of faith and trust him. Aside from my fox quirk, I have another quirk, Naruto began to say, only for All Might to interrupt him. Impossible, people can't have more than one quirk. Unless he didn't finish what he was about to say, though curious about the words that All Might had left unsaid, Naruto had more important things to think about at that moment. It's a strange quirk because it doesn't manifest like every other quirk in early childhood. It takes a moment of life and death to trigger it, and it can appear at any age, or it might not appear at all. My grandmother manifested her quirk when she was middle-aged. My grandma didn't manifest it at all. My mother manifested it as a child during a car crash when she was about to die. Her parents, my grandparents, died in that crash. Mom was the only one who survived. Naruto gulped his saliva before continuing. I manifested this quirk too when the Sludge Villain was about to kill me. I didn't know what happened at that time. I fell unconscious. When I woke up, I found myself in the hospital, and I heard that the villain that attacked me was dead. As he said that, 4 chains seemingly made out of golden light slowly peeked out from under his t-shirt and started flailing slowly around him. These chains have a similar effect to Aizawa-sensei's erasure. Anyone that gets entangled by the adamantine ceiling chains can't use their quirks. If someone gets caught by these chains, it's game over for them. It's a very powerful quirk, Naruto admitted, and that's What caused my family to hide? My mother didn't tell me everything, probably because she wants to protect me, but she warned me that a very powerful person had tried to get their hands on our quirk for generations, someone who would stop at nothing to acquire it even if they had to kill us. Unless my life is at stake, I should never reveal it in front of other people. Mom had kept her quirk a secret even from me and Dad, until I manifested the chains, and Dad still doesn't know about it even till this day. Momentarily All Might was mute with surprise. Is he talking about All For One? Was the first thing that came to his mind when he heard Naruto's description. Sensei Eri's quirk is too dangerous for her to be put in the care of an ordinary foster family. I want to take care of her. I don't want to let her suffer again. She doesn't deserve that. It's not her fault. She was born with that power. Hearing the emotion in his voice, if All Might had not known any better, he would have been tempted to believe that Naruto was the one going through that turmoil himself, not just the young girl. Little did he know though that Naruto understood Eri's situation better than anyone else. I know I'm underage, but there are only two options for taking care of Eri, and Aizawa-sensei is probably the last person you could ask to babysit a girl. All Might found himself snorting at the mental image of Eraserhead giving him his patented dead-eye glare, for even daring to suggest he became a foster father. But if push came to shove, I'm sure he'd eventually do it even if he didn't like it. I don't know anyone who takes their duty as a hero as seriously as Eraserhead, All Might conceded in his mind. Uzumaki Shonen, as much as I'd like to help you in this matter, this isn't the kind of decision that I can make alone. But seeing Naruto's crestfallen look sagged Foxear's tails, and all he added, but I promise I'll do everything I can to support your suggestion. Little Eri's case is truly a special one, but there is one thing you need to understand. If you want to convince the Hero Public Safety Commission and the Child Protection Agency that you can take care of Eri, that means that you will have to reveal your secret to them. A deathly silence instilled in the room as All Might hammered the figurative last nail in the coffin when he asked, "Are you willing to go as far as to risk endangering your family for the sake of a girl you had only met today?" It was a cold-blooded question, something that people wouldn't expect to come out of All Might, but All Might wanted the Fox boy to be completely aware of the consequences that his choice could have. Naruto didn't reply right away, and Eri too was so silent one couldn't even hear her breathing. Although she did not understand the complicated adult talk between Naruto and All Might, she had a feeling that her fate might be decided based on what Naruto said next. Eventually Naruto spoke. "Sensei, did you know up until this morning I had been seriously thinking about dropping out of UA High. I didn't want to become a hero anymore." The boy's words had been so unexpected that All Might choked on his spit and coughed several times before finally recollecting himself. It was not only the population at large that had been charmed and impressed by Naruto's self-sacrificing spirit and grit as he fought against Nomu in order to protect his classmates at USJ. All Might had been just as awed by the Fox boy too. Hearing him say he wanted to quit had completely blindsided him. "I was afraid for my parents' safety," Naruto confessed. "I still am. I'm thinking, what if some villains attacked my loved ones to get revenge on me? Is being a hero worth it if my family suffers?" All Might did not know what answer to give him. Inwardly he was again surprised someone as young as Naruto was looking at things in such a mature and cynical manner. Most teenagers at his age were only thinking about how to get famous and amaze others with their quirks, how to rise to the top and become high-ranking heroes, famous and rich. Very few took the time to think seriously about the downsides of being a hero. There was a reason why All Might himself didn't have a lover or any children. He had thought about the same things as Naruto many times too. With how many enemies he had made over the years, All Might could not in good conscience let anyone get close to him, because they would only end up as a casualty of their revenge against him. "But my mom slapped some sense into me after USJ," he said with a weak chuckle, "and encountering Eri today made me realize something. It's not like me to live in fear. It's not like me to cower from my enemies' threats. I wasn't like that. I've never been one to turn my head away from someone in need of help, even when all odds were stacked against me. I've never retreated. I never ran away." Eri-chan reminded me of who I truly am. All Might felt goosebumps appear on his arms when Naruto locked eyes with him and said, "I am Uzumaki Naruto. I don't back down and I never go back on my word, because I am a protector. This is my way. This is my will of fire." Time skip. Botausher was a capture the flag type of game in which two teams had to do their utmost to topple the other team's pole. Every team was split into attackers and defenders. The defenders would protect their pole and keep it standing, while the attackers would try to topple the opponent team's pole. Additionally, one player on each team would take the role of a Saru. They would stand on top of the pole and deter any would-be opponents from bringing it down. The traditional Botausher game had several rules. 1. A time limit of 2 minutes. 2. A team lost when their pole was toppled to a 30-degree angle or less. If neither team managed to topple the pole within that time frame, the game would be reset. 3. Punching, kicking, strangling and pulling heads were prohibited. Those were the rules for the traditional game of Botauscher, but UA changed the rules for the second event of the sports festival as follows. 1. The time limit was 5 minutes. 2. A team lost when their pole was toppled to the ground. 3. Any forms of combat were allowed, but the pole had to remain intact. Whichever team destroyed the wooden pole would be disqualified. The winner of the first event of the sports festival had been granted the chance to select any 2 players for his team, and Izuku had jumped at the chance to choose Endeavor's son Todoroki Shoto and a student from General Studies Hitoshi Shinso. The rest of the members of each team had been selected randomly by the computer. Botauscher had always been one of the most exciting games in Japan's modern history. The spectators in the stands were brimming with anticipation to see how would such a rough and exciting game play out between individuals with superpowers. The moment that Hero Midnight lowered her whip to signal the start of the game, both teams exploded into action. On Izuku's team, Todoroki took the initiative to create a small mountain of ice around the wooden pole, leaving only its top uncovered. The opponents would have to destroy the ice first before having the chance to topple the pole, while Izuku and Todoroki took the roles of defender. Tokoyami and his partner Dark Shadow took the role of the monkey and perched themselves on top of the wooden pole, fully intent on knocking down anyone that tried to get close to them. On the other team, Momoya Yorozu quickly created several metallic pillars, which were propped up against the main wooden pole, and Siro proceeded to tape them all tightly together. Jirota Shishida Beast Quirk and Ibara Shiozaki Vines Quirk from Class 1B took the role of defender. As for the role of monkey, Bwahaha come at me losers, Bakugo hollered in excitement as he sat perched up on his team's wooden pole, his palms continuously crackling with small explosions. He could not wait to blow the opposite team's attackers into smithereens, but these students were the only ones that had taken any strategic measures to win the game. Everyone else just jumped at each other like a horde of savages, each one of them trying to catch the eyes of the pro heroes in attendance with their quirks. Izuku had made several strategies in his mind, and he had tried to discuss them with his teammates before the start of the game, but all planning went to waste. Only a few seconds, and what had originally been intended as a game of Botauscher had immediately degenerated into a full-on battle royale. This is the worst, Izuku said in frustration. Even with his guts and desire to prove himself, he knew better than to try to join in the brawl. I wouldn't last even 10 seconds, he muttered to himself as he watched how the hero course student with a steel quirk from his team was suddenly engulfed by a huge mass of green vines and thrown out of bounds, slammed brutally into the wall at the edge of the arena. It was pandemonium. In no time, half a dozen students had been either thrown out of bounds or knocked unconscious. While everything seemed hopeless, Shinso, one of the 2 boys that Izuku had chosen in his team, suddenly shouted as loud as he could, "Attack the wooden pole now!" With the Vines girl out of the picture, that ugly beast stands no chance. His shout was largely ignored by everyone, almost everyone. The Beast Quirk user frowned at his words and said, "I may not be a pretty boy, but if you think I'm that easy to take down, you are in for a rude awakening." However, at his words of warning, Shinso smirked in triumph and allowed himself an evil-sounding cackle as he gave the B-class student his next order. "On the contrary, I don't underestimate you at all. Now go wild on your team's wooden pole, smash it with all your strength." Shinso's plan was doomed to fail, however, seeing as the opponent team's monkey proved to be too powerful. The moment that Jirota Shishida jumped to attack his own team's wooden pole, a huge explosion blasted him out of bounds like a burning cannonball, uncaring of the fact that the Beast Quirk user was his own teammate. The moment he sensed his hostility, Bakugo swiftly attacked him with everything he had. Back to Naruto, All Might and Eri. The 3 of them had just gotten into a taxi and were on their way back to Mizutofu City. "Would you children stop staring at me? It's unnerving," All Might said, his face breaking into a sweat. It was not only Naruto who could not take his eyes off him, even little Eri was gawking at him, and that was because All Might's muscle form had run out of time right before he called the taxi. His muscular physique, which looked as if it had been taken out of a comic book, was nowhere to be seen now. Instead, what could be described as a living skeleton stood in his place. In spite of still wearing his hero uniform, the taxi driver didn't spare All Might a second glance. In his eyes, he looked just like a lame fan doing a sorry cosplay of the real hero, All Might. If Naruto and Eri had not seen him turn into his current form with their own eyes, they would have not believed it either. 1 hour later, the taxi stopped in front of the main police station of Mizutofu City with the little girl cradled in his arms. Naruto stepped out of the car gently so as to not wake her up. His face involuntarily broke into a smile when he saw how she was hugging one of his fluffy fox tails to her chest while sleeping. Nonetheless, despite Naruto wishing for her to continue sleeping, the city's noise in the afternoon woke her up. He chuckled when he saw her burying her face into the fur of his tail to hide from the light. My full name is Eri, the girl insisted, even as the two adults in the room were looking at her questionably for not saying her surname. Next to All Might, a tall and well-built man in his late 30s had a pondering expression on his face as he turned to look at his computer. You said you were 6 years old? Yes, the man asked her again for confirmation, and Eri nodded, all the while trying to hide behind Naruto's tails. Don't worry, Eri-chan, Detective Tsukachi is one of my closest friends. You can trust him, All Might said, trying to reassure the little girl. A few moments later the detective shook his head and said, "It's no use, I can't find her in our database. I checked all the births from 5, 6 and 7 years ago and there are only around 60 girls with the name Eri, but our Eri-chan doesn't match their description at all, since they all have parents and they are registered either in kindergarten or in the first year of elementary school. For all I know, she's a ghost. We have nothing on her." It wasn't only Eri that was anxious. Naruto was growing a little restless too. "This might be for the best," All Might unexpectedly said after a while. "What do you mean by that, Sensei?" Naruto asked quickly. "If she's not registered, that means we don't necessarily need to go about it through the official channels. I'm still a police officer, you know," the detective said, his exasperation increasing when he saw All Might starting to laugh awkwardly. Turning towards Naruto, All Might said, "There is a chance that Eri-chan could be allowed to stay with you without going public to the HPSC with your ability, but to make that happen your parents need to be on board with the idea too." His words reminded Naruto of the elephant in the room. Even if they could work around the law and prevent his adamantine sealing chains from being exposed to the public, the fact was that if his parents did not agree to take Eri, and it was all for naught, but if they agree to take Eri-chan, and that means that dad will find out about mom's quirk too. How would he feel knowing that his wife had been hiding such an important fact about her for so many years? Would his trust in her be shattered? Wouldn't their relationship be affected? Other couples have divorced for lesser reasons. Before we make further plans, you should talk it over with your parents first and get a concrete answer, All Might said. "I will arrange a car to escort you home and I will assign 2 officers to keep a watch on your home until we get to the bottom of this. Normally I would insist on Eri-chan staying here and I would call the Child Protection Agency, but I understand this is a sensitive case. They are not capable of taking care of Eri," the detective also said. While Naruto, All Might and Eri were riding the taxi on their way back to Mizutofu City, the freshmen participating in the UA High Sports Festival were beating the brakes off each other. Furthermore, due to the measures that each team had taken at the start to safeguard their wooden poles, it was not realistic to topple them without destroying them while there were so many other opponents attacking them at once. Unlike the traditional Botauscher where fighting was prohibited, in this current game they could be taken out in one shot. Eventually the time limit of 5 minutes passed without any of the teams managing to achieve their goal, toppling off the opponent's pole. Watching the field that looked as if it had been carpet bombed by drones, the UA principal Nizu and the rest of the organizers of the sports festival didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The second stage of the festival had been a big failure because they had failed to anticipate the students' thirst for battle and recognition. What had originally been intended to test out the students' strategic skills and ability to perform as a team had been reduced to a mere barbaric battle royale within seconds. From the start of the game, at least, the crowd appears to be in high spirits, was the only thing Nizu could tell himself as consolation. Originally the plan was for the winning team of the Botauscher game to proceed to the final stage where they would face each other in individual battles tournament style, but with neither team winning and with so few students left uninjured on the field, they could not restart the game and make them go at it again. To decide a winner, the organizers of the event decided to proceed with the final stage, the fighting tournament. "I survived by the skin of my teeth," Izuku thought in dismay. "If it wasn't for Todoroki-san, I wouldn't have made it out of the second event." He knew, he had always known, that he was fighting an uphill battle, that he would always be at a disadvantage against people that had quirks. Todoroki Shoto's performance in particular left a deep impression on Izuku. Unfortunately, there were not enough survivors left to participate in the tournament, but there were quite a few students that were thrown out of bounds at the early stage of the Botauscher game and were injured too seriously to continue, so they selected 3 of them to advance to the next stage. After drawing the lots, the tournament brackets appeared as such: 1 Todoroki Shoto vs Mizo Shoji, 2 Ibara Shiozaki vs Setsuna Tokage, 3 Tenya Ida vs Midoriya Izuku, 4 Katsuki Bakugo vs Hitoshi Shinso, 5 Fumikage Tokoyami vs Tetsu, 6 Nito Monoma vs Kojiro Bando, 7 Ijiro Kirishima vs Mashiro Ojiro, 8 Shirhai Korwaro vs Yui Kodai. Watching the battle between Todoroki Shoto and Mizo Shoji Izuku was writing furiously in his notebook. The sight of a muscular teen nerding out and muttering to himself as if he was entranced drew out a few looks from the people around him. At the same time, he was trying to think of plans that would work if he ever had to fight them. Mizo Shoji's quirk doesn't look as flashy and may not seem as powerful as that of Todoroki Shoto, but it can be very versatile and unpredictable. Izuku muttered at the scene in front of him, taking advantage of the crowd control ability of his quirk. Todoroki froze the entire floor of the tournament stage, trapping Mizo's legs in ice too. I suggest you give up. I don't want to hurt you unnecessarily, Todoroki began to say confidently, but an unexpected punch smashed into his face with such power that he went flying. Although Mizo Shoji's legs got trapped, his quirk dupli arms allowed him to multiply any part of his body through his arms, effectively giving him the ability to elongate his arms to impressive distances. And that was not all. Any organ or body part that he duplicated through his quirk would become much stronger than the original. His punch fell to Todoroki as if he had been hit by a car, but Shoji was not done yet. Even though his legs were still trapped in ice, his tentacles sprouted even more arms and threw a powerful blow at Todoroki again. Although he had almost been knocked out cold by that punch, Todoroki's fighting spirit burned even brighter than before. A massive wall of ice grew out in front of him just in time to shield him from Shoji's heavy punch, and in the next moment he stomped his foot powerfully against the ground. The spectators turned silent with awe as a massive tsunami of ice suddenly froze half the stadium to bits. With the first match coming to an end so quickly, the reality of the situation finally dawned on Izuku. There was only one match left until it was his turn. His anxiety kicked in, and he started biting his nails as he read the pages of his notebook that were filled with information that he had managed to dig up on his opponent Tenya Ida. So absorbed in his notebook he had been that he didn't even see when the second match between Ibara Shiozaki and Setsuna Tokage start or finish. It was only when he heard his name being called that he finally came back to his senses. From the hero course, Tenya Ida versus from general studies, Midoriya Izuku coming down from the stands and walking onto the stage. Izuku felt shivers traveling down his spine. Man up me, this is my opportunity, this is my only chance to show everyone that I belong in the hero course. He was scared shitless to be alone on the stage in front of so many people with the whole country watching his every move. However, his inhuman training and the grueling beatings he had put his body through over the past year had not been in vain. Moreover, the incident where he had defeated the pink-skinned giant villain and saved the family that was being held hostage had improved his self-confidence. He was not the same timid, weak and scrawny boy from 1 year ago. My name is Tenya Ida, please treat me fairly, Ida said, and bowed stiffly. Present Mick's voice resounded in the background. With his engine quirk, Ida-kun showed he is one of the fastest participants in this tournament. As for his opponent from general studies, his quirk, wait, does he even have a quirk? I have not seen him use any special abilities, Aizawa replied to him. He has won the first event by outsmarting his competition and survived in the second by avoiding frontal one-on-one fights. But Izuku tuned out all their voices, his eyes looking at Tenya piercingly. He brought his hands up and his elbows close to his body, getting into a fighting stance. Start. The moment that Midnight shouted and flicked her whip, smoke came out of the tubes on Tenya Ida's calves as he broke into a sprint fast. Izuku inwardly exclaimed, but Naruto was even faster than that. I can see it, I can see his move accurately predicting Ida's strike. Izuku leaned back, dodging Tenya's wind-stirring kick as if he was in the Matrix, but Ida was far from done. Accelerating even harder, he turned around and delivered a devastating whirlwind kick out of position and unable to react in time to Ida's superhuman speed. Izuku was unable to dodge, he could only brace himself and take the hit with his guard. Although Izuku blocked the hit, Tenya's powerful whirlwind kick sent him flying as if he had been hit by a truck, but instead of following up and delivering the final blow, Ida shouted, "What are you doing? Why are you not using your quirk?" Standing up with difficulty from the ground, Izuku grimaced as he touched his left arm with his right hand. Ida's kick had snapped his left forearm as if it had been a twig. Because I don't have a quirk, but I'll show everyone that I don't need a quirk to become a pro hero, Izuku said, his voice strained as he talked through the pain coming from his broken arm. Do you hear yourself? How are you going to do that? It's impossible, Ida yelled at him in disbelief. Turning toward Midnight, Tenya raised his hand up high and said out loud, "Referee, I request this fight to be stopped. My opponent doesn't have a quirk. I don't want to hurt him any further. Shut up and fight," Izuku suddenly screamed, taking everyone by surprise. "You talk as if you have this in the bag, but I'm still standing. I haven't given up," he shouted with so much strength that he was out of breath. "As long as I'm still standing, I won't give up. Come, I'm still here. Come at me and fight." His outburst left Tenya speechless. After a few moments, Midnight said, "It is not against the rules for quirkless students to participate," but Professor Tenya Ida began to protest, only for Midnight to cut him off. Unless you want to forfeit, the match will proceed until one of you is either incapacitated, thrown out of bounds, or admits defeat. This is final, she said, and pointed her whip at him. Turning towards Izuku, Ida said seriously, please remember that I tried to save you from unnecessary pain. You've brought this cut the crap already and fight, Izuku said, unknowingly taking a page out of Naruto's book and provoking him. Such foul language, it is unbecoming of a. But with a burst of speed that Ida had not expected from a quirkless person, Izuku charged at him. Ida barely managed to move his head out of the way, Izuku's fist almost grazing his nose. Izuku felt like kicking himself for his lapse in judgment. I shouldn't have tried headhunting someone as fast as Tenya, Ida. It should have been obvious. He dodged it, easily realizing his mistake. Naruto's words from a few months ago rang in his mind at that moment. If your opponent doesn't have some physical enhancement quirk, always go for their body, because most people generally expect their opponents to go for their head, so they're always on guard against that, and they're also more used to dodging hits going there, but they can't dodge body hits as easily. More importantly, even if people with regular bodies can train their muscles and learn martial arts, they can't train their internal organs, so no matter how strong they become, if you catch someone with a good body shot, they'll collapse as if they're paralyzed. Let me show you what getting punched in the liver area feels like. Oi, where are you running? Oi, get back here, you coward. You need to feel it on your own skin first to fully appreciate the effectiveness. A rush of anger washed over him at the memory of how Naruto taught him everything by making him feel the effects of each hit on his own body, but that rush of anger only served to empower him at that moment. Nonetheless, Izuku was not allowed too much time to think, because after getting over his surprise at his quirkless opponent almost managing to score a hit on him, Ida started his attack again with a burst of speed higher than the previous times. His kick found its mark again, and Izuku only managed, at the last moment, to twist his body and receive the hit with his left shoulder instead of being hit in the head. Even as he was sent tumbling once again, Izuku quickly stood up to his feet, and it was not a moment too soon. A split of a second later, Tenya Ida's heel cracked the concrete stage. He followed with yet another high kick, but Izuku dodged it perfectly, this time by crouching. Attacking only using his legs had made Ida predictable, and Izuku jumped at the chance to finally counterattack with Ida having left himself open. Izuku smashed a heavy punch into his guts. Spittle flew out of Tenya's mouth, and as he doubled over from pain, Izuku's knee rose to smash into his face. But just as Izuku was about to deal the finishing blow, Ida's calves were lit up with a blue fire and his body was propelled ahead, tackling Izuku with his head and making him lose his balance. Fighting through the pain from his stomach and his lack of air, Ida wrapped his arms around Izuku's waist and forced himself to continue running, intent on pushing his opponent all the way to the edge of the stage and throwing him out of bounds. But Izuku's forearm suddenly snaked under Ida's chin and his muscles bulged as he used his entire strength in a desperate attempt to choke him to sleep. But his effort was bound to fail, because one hand was not enough to choke someone successfully. His martial arts instructor at the dojo had spent many hours teaching him the basics of grappling, with Ida activating his special move Recipro Burst even while lacking air and feeling dizzy and faint from the body shot he had eaten. He traversed the stage with Izuku in tow in the blink of an eye. However, right as he was about to push Izuku out, only half a meter was left. Ida unexpectedly felt his feet leave the ground with a burst of strength uncharacteristic of a normal human. Izuku grabbed Ida by the hem of his gym uniform with his still working hand and lifted him in the air before smashing him down over his shoulder with a judo throw that made Kushina stand up from her seat in amazement. Tenya and Izuku distantly heard the boy's classmates crying out in distress when they saw him getting thrown out of bounds, but their shouts were quickly drowned by Present Mike, who screamed at the top of his lungs, his yells filling the stadium. Oh, and why would you look at that winner? General Studies Midoriya Izuku Midnight also said as she flailed her whip around as Izuku let out a victory cry. Much to his surprise, the entire stadium broke into loud cheers. It was in human nature to root for the underdog, and Izuku had been a very pitiful underdog, quirkless and with one arm broken. Literally nobody had expected him to turn around the situation like that. Seeing the thousands of people in the stands acknowledging him like that, Izuku involuntarily felt his eyes start swimming with tears. He may have grown up both in body and mind due to his grueling training over the past year, but at the core he was still a sensitive, an emotional teenage boy after all the doubt and suffering he had endured after his idol putting down his dreams 2 times already. Izuku was finally having his efforts acknowledged. Izuku's emotional reaction to their cheers spurred the crowd even further, and many of the spectators rose from their seats as they clapped their hands for him vigorously. As the medics carried Izuku out on a stretcher, he had no illusions about his position in the tournament. Although he had won the match with his broken arm and his energy completely depleted from having tapped into His hysterical strength for the last judo throw, Izuku understood that he would not be able to fight again. Nevertheless, he had achieved his objective at this sports festival. He had made everyone acknowledge him. He had left a lasting impression on the heroes and professors alike by winning the first event and by beating someone as good as Ida. His hard work and his relentlessness had paid off. He could not have hoped for a better outcome. I wonder what kind of mess he's gotten himself into, Kushina said. When has our son ever gotten himself in serious trouble? Though Minato's words were not baseless, even before Naruto's behavior changed for the better and he stopped being disrespectful and rebellious, he had never gotten into real trouble. Some scuffles at school and being admonished for being too rowdy were normal for regular boys his age, but other than that, despite not putting effort into studying and often coming home late, he didn't skip school and he didn't partake in delinquent-like activities. Nonetheless, if the way he was stepping on the gas pedal was anything to go by, Minato seemed worried too. The reason for their current anxiety was the text message they had received only a few minutes after the end of the UA High Sports Festival. Dad, there's something important I need to talk to you and Mom about. It's really important. Please come home as soon as you can. The two of them tried calling Naruto after that, but he did not pick up any of their calls as parents. While knowing that Naruto had asked them before a call all might, how could they not be worried after receiving such a text message from their teenage son who had gone alone all the way to Tokyo? His fox ears picking up the screeching sound of tires made by a car abruptly braking. Naruto quickly stood up and went to the entrance door. Startled by his sudden action, Eri jumped up from the sofa and ran after him, grabbing him from his pants from behind. Don't worry, Eri-chan, I'm sure my parents will like you. Really? the little girl asked in a hopeful voice. Really, he said, and patted her on the head. Besides, what's not to like about you? You're the cutest girl I've ever seen. Eri looked down shyly, her cheeks slightly pink with embarrassment at his praise. Although he reassured Eri that his parents were going to love her, deep down Naruto was not any less anxious than her. Even though he was only 15 years old physically, due to having the experience of two lives, Naruto was more mature mentally than his age implied. He understood how difficult was the upcoming discussion with his parents going to be. It was unlike Minato to drive aggressively and go over the speed limit, and he was not the type to brake with a screeching sound either, but he could not help his desire to get home as fast as possible. At that moment, parking roughly in front of the gate of the garage, Minato and Kushina slammed the doors of the car as they got out and rushed towards the entrance door. Just as he was about to grab the doorknob, the entrance door opened and nearly hit him in the face. Naruto, you're okay? Why didn't you pick up the phone? We were so worried, Kushina said, and rushed at him momentarily, not knowing whether she wanted to take him in her arms and embrace him or strangle him. She ended up settling for grabbing him by the shoulders and shaking him, but suddenly she became as still as a statue, hidden almost completely by Naruto's three fluffy fox tails. A little girl no older than 6 was clutching at the fabric of his pants with both hands as she looked up anxiously. Mom, Dad, this is Eri-chan. As Naruto related them the events he had gone through while he had been in Tokyo, Minato and Kushina's faces went through several different expressions. Hearing that a girl as young as her, she was only 6, had been abused to the point where she had decided to run away from home, the two of them could not help being filled with righteous anger, but their anger soon deflated at the sight of the dirty dress she was wearing and the soiled bandages wrapped around Eri's arms and legs. Overwhelmed with a feeling of pity, Kushina came to sit on the sofa next to Eri and Naruto and took the little girl in a motherly embrace that left the little girl lost for words. Although she stiffened at the unexpected physical contact with a person that she did not know anything about, a few moments later Eri melted into Kushina's embrace, with Kushina's motherly instincts taking over. Like that, the duty of acting like a rational adult fell on Minato's shoulders. As much pity as he felt for the little girl's plight, this was not the kind of matter that could be brushed over with just feelings alone. But why bring her home? Naruto, don't misunderstand, it's not that I have something against Eri-chan in particular, but there are several legal procedures that one has to go through before becoming the guardian of a child. The Child Protection Agency could even get someone to go to prison if they just grabbed a random child from the streets and took them home. Naruto made a difficult expression, not knowing exactly how to break it to him. He scratched the back of his head furiously for a moment and blew out a long sigh before addressing his mother. Mom, I think I have to come out with the secret. Kushina's and Minato's eyes became as wide as saucers, though for different reasons, but before Kushina could reply, Minato stood up and came to Naruto, putting a hand on his shoulder. Minato said, "That's what you were worried about. Listen to me, Naruto, no matter what, you are still my son. Being gay doesn't change that. I don't, Dad, I'm not gay." Naruto shouted in indignation at his misunderstanding. In spite of what was about to happen, Naruto divulging a secret that she had kept away from her husband for so many years, Kushina could not keep in her laughter at the unexpected hilarity of the situation. Maybe it was because of how nervous she was in regards to what was about to come, but Kushina could not Stop laughing for a good while but I thought Minato began to say in confusion. No, it's something entirely different. He trailed off only for Kushina to say, you made me a promise, Naruto. Why would you go back on your word now? It's the only way it would make sense for you. Why Eri-chan needs to stay with us. A momentary silence descended as Naruto looked down at his clasped hands and Kushina chewed on her lower lip with her eyes pinned on the coffee table in front of the sofa. Minato kept switching from looking from one to another as a feeling of irritation slowly seeped in at the thought that his wife and his son had been keeping a secret from him. But then he palmed his face with a hand and let out a big groan before saying, just tell me, I promise I won't be mad. Hearing his father's words, Naruto began to explain the situation in detail. Eri-chan has a powerful quirk, probably the most powerful and most dangerous quirk I've ever seen. It's almost like the power of a god. This innocent and adorable little girl Kushina and Minato unknowingly thought at the same time as they turned to look at Eri, who was now sticking as close as humanly possible to Naruto's side and hiding her face behind one of his fluffy fox tails. Her quirk is rewind. She can turn back time on someone's body. I've seen it with my own eyes. She made one of her captors grow younger until he became a toddler, and then he disappeared. She made him stop existing. His parents became speechless. The child protection agency can't take care of Eri-chan. They can't stop her if her quirk goes out of control. As far as I know, there are only 2 people, maybe 3, that can stop her. One of them is my homeroom teacher, Aizawa-sensei. He can cancel quirks. The other one is the modern hero art teacher, the R-rated hero Midnight. She could probably put her to sleep, but you can tell neither is exactly the best parent material out there. The last person would be me. What could you do about it with your quirk? Although it looked like Naruto was going to only talk about himself instead of also revealing that she had a quirk too, Kushina decided that since the cat was out of the bag, she might as well come out in the open too. Minato's mouth fell open in what seemed to be disbelief at the sight in front of him, for golden chains glowing with a bright light unexpectedly tore out through the back of his wife's shirt and flailed slowly in the air around her. I'm sorry, Minato, Kushina said guiltily and looked down, not daring to meet his eyes. I've been lying to you for years. I'm not quirkless. A silence that one could hear a pin drop was instilled. Seeing that Minato was not interrupting her, she continued speaking, all the while wrenching her fingers. I've never told anyone about this quirk before. The Hero Association doesn't know about it either. Originally my plan was to take this secret to the grave with me. I don't understand why all this secrecy. Minato eventually croaked out, your chains don't look like a terrible quirk or something that would put someone's life in danger. These chains have the ability to cancel all quirks. They offer an absolute defense against any sort of attacks. They are indestructible, and anyone caught by chains has no chance of escaping. I've also never found anything that the spear tips of these chains cannot pierce. Kushina explained. Alright, that sounds incredible, he agreed, but that only brings me back to the earlier question. Why keep it a secret with the potential of this quirk? You could have become a top 10 hero effortlessly. My word, the police, the special forces, hell, the prime minister himself would directly ask for someone like you to become their personal bodyguard. How could you give up on all that? None of that matters if I ended up dead. Kushina replied a bit more harshly than she had intended. What an evil man has been trying to hunt down my family for generations. I don't know his real name, but he is known as All for One. He has a unique ability to steal other people's quirk. My grandmother was the first who manifested this chains, and All for One had been obsessed with stealing this quirk for decades. But Granny was strong and she was intelligent too. Using her husband's connections in the police, she entered a witness protection program, and All for One lost track of her eventually. After pausing for a second to clear her throat, Kushina said, my mother never awakened these chains. It takes a moment of great stress, a moment of life and death to awaken them. And it's not guaranteed, but I awakened my chains when I was 10 in the car crash that killed my parents. I survived thanks to this quirk, so I'll never resent it in spite of the dangers that it had brought upon me. But before my grandma passed away, she told me the secret and made me swear I'd never use my quirk or reveal it to anyone. All for One was too powerful and too dangerous. I couldn't tell you either. I didn't want to put you in danger. Finally lifting her head to look her husband in the eyes, she said, I had no intention of ever telling anyone if Naruto hadn't awakened the chains himself too. The Sludge Villain, Minato exclaimed as the pieces finally fell together in his mind. He was an intelligent man, and he had always wondered how had Naruto managed to survive against someone like the Sludge Villain, whose quirk was a counter for almost all physical damage types. And not just surviving, the Sludge Villains had even lost his life. His initial guess had been that a vigilante had happened to be nearby, but after finally finding out the truth, everything made sense. Looking down at her hands again, Kushina said, I'm sorry I've kept such an important secret from you, but I don't regret it. If I could go back, I would make the same choice again. All I ever wanted was for my family to be happy and safe. I'm sorry, Mom, Naruto mumbled, feeling like shit for what he was putting his mother through at that moment. Unable to bear with the pressing silence that was instilled, Naruto said after a Well, will you allow me to take care of Eri-chan? It's only for 3 years. All Might told me that normally I'd have to be at least 25 years old to adopt a child, but he could pull some strings for the Child Protection Agency to let me adopt Eri when I become of age. Seeing that they were keeping silent, he added, his voice taking on a more pleading tone. I know I'm asking for a lot, but you don't have to worry. I only need you to be your legal guardian. I will take care of her every day and take her with me to school. I'll also get a part-time job to help with the money, and I believe I can get a provisional hero license next semester. I won't burden you, I promise. Just let me take care of Eri, please. Minato and Kushina were not silent because they were pondering on whether to accept Eri-chan or not. They were just mute with surprise because they had never heard Naruto beg them for something like that. You want to adopt Eri when you become an adult, Kushina muttered as he looked at the little girl that was huddled at his side and looking down anxiously. She could not understand what could have prompted Naruto to go as far as to force her into revealing her secret quirk for the sake of a girl he had only met a few hours ago, but that's because she did not know about Naruto's past life. Kushina did not know how much did Naruto resonate with Eri-chan being an orphan growing up without feeling love and affection, or being born with a cursed power. You probably think I'm just a kid, so I don't know what I want, but this isn't something I want in the heat of the moment. I am willing to do anything to take care of Eri-chan, I promise, he said as he wrapped an arm around Eri and rubbed her shoulder gently. This could have gone better, but it could have also gone a lot of worse. Naruto thought his parents had not given him an answer right away. Instead, they told him that they were going to town to discuss it between the two of them first. I haven't thought about it that much before, but my sensitive hearing must have made their lives quite difficult sometimes now. A few hours later, he was sitting together with Eri at the table in the kitchen. They were having dinner. Putting down her spoon, Eri raised her head to look at Naruto with her big red eyes as she asked, "Are you in trouble because of me?" All worries momentarily vanished from Naruto's thoughts when he saw the little girl's mouth smudged with curry and her big innocent eyes looking at him tearfully. "Ga, why the hell are you so cute?" he almost cooed. "You don't have to worry about that," Naruto said with a sunny smile and brought a napkin at her mouth to wipe the traces of sauce away. "Do you like the curry on?" The little girl made a noise of confirmation and nodded her head energetically before grabbing the spoon and taking another big mouthful of curry and rice that smudged her face all over again. "I never had kiwi beefo, it's so good," she said through bites, finish swallowing before speaking. "Okay, it's not nice to speak with your mouth full," Naruto admonished her lightly and wiped her mouth and cheeks again with a new napkin. Eri-chan nodded obediently before diving back into her bowl. Naruto vowed to himself he would make Eri taste all kinds of delicious foods from then on. It was late past midnight when Naruto's fox ears flinched and he woke up at the sound of the entrance door being open. Normally he slept with custom-made earbuds for his fox ears to prevent any random noises from disturbing him, but that night he did not wear them on purpose in order to hear when his parents came back home. Getting up from his bed slowly so as to not disturb Eri, who was sleeping curled up next to him, he went to the living room right as his parents finished taking their shoes off. "Crap," Naruto heard his father mutter under his breath when he saw him enter the living room, and Kushina giggled at her husband's expense. The reason for Minato's cussing became clear to Naruto when he took in their appearance. Their faces were slightly flushed. Minato's neck was peppered with red marks. Kushina's long crimson hair was a disheveled mess, and the smell that wafted from them. "Ugh, sorry, talk to you in the morning. Good night," Naruto said quickly and did a 180 before making a beeline back to his bedroom, his cheeks red with embarrassment. Sometimes Naruto hated how perceptive he could be because of his fox quirk,